everybody, I'm Russell Simon.
And I'm Mark Donatelli.
Here for Simon Says on the Mark. And Mark, even though I'm a Jets fan and obviously you're a Bills fan, we can put those differences aside for the next 7 minutes and talk about what else? The AFC North, and specifically a big game going on tonight. It's the Steelers and the Ravens. They play a million times. It's a rivalry approaching Jets-Patriots level in intensity. And last season, the Steelers obviously beat the Ravens 31-24 in the second round of the playoffs, had a great second-half comeback, and then week one, the Ravens pulverized the Steelers 35-7, avenging that one. And AFC North standings, the Ravens are 5-2, Steelers 6-2, and even the Cincinnati Bengals in there at 5-2. And this is a game that could really determine how things play out in the AFC North. It really should be a good one.
Right, definitely, and there's always little trash talk going on before the game. I don't know if you saw Terrell Suggs in a press conference this week calling out Hines Ward. That's just what makes these kind of games great, and the rivalry is definitely built. Obviously it's not a very long-lasting rivalry, being that the Ravens are not that old of a team, but when you look at they're very similar on both sides of the ball,
Definitely.
Especially up front. Their front seven, even offensively. They rely on two very versatile backs. Obviously the Ravens with Rice and the Steelers with Mendenhall. So I mean, it's funny because as big a rivalry this is, usually you want it to be an offensive team versus a defensive team, or vice versa. But
two identical teams.
They're very identical in the ways they play, and it should. I think this game is indicative of who wins the AFC North.
As it is most of the time, and the thing that stands out for me is the Steelers really coming out off a high. They beat New England, really played an incredible game, and I don't really like the Steelers, obviously, at all. But I was so impressed with how they played last week. Just killed the Patriots. I mean, they dominated them for the full 60 minutes, and that's indicative of Roethlisberger's performance this year. Big Ben, 8 games, 14 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. He's got a 95.7 QB rating, and that's something that the Ravens don't have. Roethlisberger, a lot of flexibility in the pocket. He can hit Miller. He's got the great deep ball threat with Wallace, and the Steelers really are a very impressive offense where I think the Ravens have really struggled at times. They lost 12-7 to Jacksonville. Flacco was horrendous in the first half against the Cardinals, but then they came back and had a great game. So they're still 5-2 and they're still in it. And I do agree with what you said before. These really are two teams that are identical in every way.
Right. I'd say their defenses are identical, but I to be honest, I think
that.
I don't know. I think the Ravens offense, I think at this point is definitely has not lived up to the hype. I mean, I don't know how hyped they were, before the season.
True.
They weren't, on the level of, the Packers or Patriots.
Obviously,
but they were expected to be pretty proficient. A lot of people were talking about Flacco stepping up and being, one of the more, premier passers in the league. That obviously hasn't happened.
Just like Sanchez.
Right. And you look at their receiver core, obviously Bolden, one of the more reliable targets in the league. But when you look behind him, they brought in Lee Evans from Buffalo. And from a Bills standpoint, as of right now, that's actually looking amazingly somehow. The Bills so far have gotten the upper hand on that trade because Lee Evans hasn't played a snap for the Ravens yet. Torrey Smith, the rookie from Maryland, he's been inconsistent. He played the Raven game. He had 3 touchdowns. Since
Big
then,
game
he really
winner
hasn't done much
against the Cardinals.
Right, but obviously he's not as consistent as you'd want a number 2 receiver to be.
No.
So I mean, but you look at that Steelers offense last week, just the way they moved the ball up and down the Patriots, and given the Patriots defense is not
that good.
Is not prolific.
It's not the
to
Ravens
say the least,
defense.
but they still set out and they went with a game plan. A perfectly executed game plan to beat the Patriots, a lot of short passes, and you could probably see the same thing with that this week.
And now the Steelers have caught a bit of an injury bug. Lamar Woodley and James Ferrier both out, and defensively I think this hurts the Steelers, but I think they'll still be able to bring that physical style of play. And I do wonder, though, how, with these injuries, how they'll stop the run. I like Ray Rice, Rutgers kid, very quick, agile, very good game against the Jets, and throughout this season, he's great out of the backfield on these screens, and he killed the Steelers week 1. And I think this is key for the Ravens offense. If they can establish continuity in the running game and get Rice going, then that'll open up the field a bit for Flacco. He can kind of avoid the pressure by running more with Ray Rice. And I think that is key for the Ravens offense, and I think the Steelers definitely have to key in on Rice as their number one target to stop in this game.
Well, yeah, and that first game of the year, a lot of people came away with the feeling that, this is an aging Steeler defense. They can't stop the run like they used to. You got a lot of guys, over 30,
Warren Sapp
especially
called
in the
them
front
old.
seven. And I think I wouldn't call this a statement game for the Steelers, being that they're 6-1, and obviously
6-2.
Sorry, 6-2. I wouldn't call it a statement game, but like I said, I mean, you can't lose twice to the Ravens and expect to win that division, and especially with the Bengals. I mean, they're 5-2, 5-2,
5-2, yes.
Yeah, 5-2. I mean, nobody would have expected that, but they've taken care of business against good teams, and obviously, I wouldn't consider them a
no, not yet.
prime contender for that division, but you got to watch out. For the Steelers, they can't end up losing twice to the Ravens.
That can't happen. And Mark, will they end up losing twice to the Ravens? Who do you think wins this one in Pittsburgh?
Well, I think the Steelers are going to come away with this win. I think from a Ravens defensive perspective, they're going to have a hard time getting pressure on Roethlisberger because he's so elusive. He's so hard to bring down. And especially if you bring extra guys to try to get him, they have so much speed in the outside with Mendenhall and Wallace that if they get the ball out quickly, they're gonna be running with a lot of open space. I think that's where it's gonna come down to. From the Ravens front seven perspective, I think the Steelers are gonna be able to take care of business.
I think it goes without saying that the Steelers definitely have a chip on their shoulder. They have first place in the division, but they were embarrassed week 1, and they want to go out in front of their home fans and get a big win. I think they will. Just like that, and I think the Steelers are going to win this one. 24-21 could be in overtime.
I'm going to take Steelers 20, Ravens 16.
There you have it. I'm Russell Simon.
And I'm Mark Donatelli.
Back to you guys.